Welcome to GFN Gaming, you beautiful I'm Russ, and in today's battle report, we pit the malign forces of the Legionaries against the uncorruptible purity of the Grey Knights. With their not-so-recent update, both sides will now be fielding 6 highly skilled 3 APL operatives. Can the Compendium team hold its own against the more advanced team? Let's see. The mission today is a classic. We'll be playing Loot and Salvage. A quick rundown of the mission: there are 6 objectives on the board. Operatives can perform the loot and salvage action whilst within triangle of an objective marker that it controls that has not already been looted. Doing so will gain them 1 victory point to a maximum of 4 per turn. Each objective can be looted a maximum of 3 times during the battle. That's the mission. It's from the core book, so in theory we shouldn't forget too many rules, and before we look at the teams in detail, let's just review the terrain. These terrain pieces will be light and traversable. These are the heavy terrain pieces, and these are the vantage points. With the admin done, let's have a look at the operatives taking part in today's battle, starting with the bad guys. Everyone in this kill team will be Mark of Nurgle to make them disgustingly resilient.
Sir, you disgust me.
Leading the merry band of bad guys is the Legionary Chosen. It's a bit of a proxy with this one. He's got a plasma pistol, and we're going to say his power fist is the Demon Blade. Next up, the man voted least likely to get his library card renewed is the Balefire Acolyte. Not content to just slap you with a burning book, he is also armed with a fell dagger and a tainted bolt pistol. This guy's also going to have the warded armor. Rocking the heavy guns and fire support for the team, we've got a heavy gunner. I think this is another proxy, but we're running this as a heavy bolter. And so he can still shuffle around to some degree, he's going to be equipped with the Suspensor system. Next we have the Annointed. No, no, not that one, you sweet child of the 90s. This one. Armed with a bolt pistol and his Daemonic claw. Next up we have Sneak Sneakerson. It is the ShriveTalon. Rocking his Flensing blades and a bolt pistol, he will also be the only person peddling Krak in this team.
He's got a Krak grenade, okay? I do the jokes, not you.
Finally, the obvious key player in this match, we have the gunner with plasma gun. With the potential for AP2, this guy is a real Astartes killer. So that's the Legionaries kill team. Let's see who they're going to be facing today. They're going to be facing the Grey Knights. Equals pequals. Leading the righteous band of Titan's sons is the Justicar, armed with a Stormbolter and his big old Nemesis Demon Hammer. He's going to have the true silver armor and a Psych-Out grenade. A bit of a waste, I think, taking a gunner with Grey Knights. No offense, buddy. I do enjoy the model though. He's armed with a Psycanon though, not the silencer that he's modeled with. By far the coolest looking in the team, and definitely should be the Justicar, is a normal Grey Knight. He's armed with a power weapon for that lethal 5+ and a Stormbolter. He's also going to have Psybolt ammunition for that +1 to damage, and against Nurgle that just means it's a normal one. Yay! Taking up the last spots on the team are 3 Grey Knights with Falchions. One of these guys is also going to be equipped with the Hexagramic ward. And that's it, that's both teams, so let's get into the game. Starting with the first initiative roll, the Legionaries get a 2 and the Grey Knights get a 4, and they're going to choose to be the attackers. Sides are picked and the barricades are placed. Legionaries get to pick their deployment zone and they go with B. Leaving the Grey Knights now to deploy in deployment zone A. In the scouting phase, the Legionaries choose to dash and the Grey Knights choose to infiltrate, meaning they'll retain the first turn. A kill team of Grey Knights walk with purpose onto the teleportarium platform on the strike cruiser Titan's Dawn. The next moment they are on Krulgor Nemes 14. A Chaos Warband has started a ritual designed to drag the entire planet into the Immaterium. As these kill teams face off in this vital mission, the fate of the planet is on the line. Turn 1 strategy phase, and both teams will be awarded 1 chivalrous pigeon.
I say, tally-ho!
Starting with the Grey Knights, and they drew from Seek and Destroy, ending with Deadly Marksman, Rout and Challenge. The Gunner is going to be the Marksman, and for Challenge we're going Power Weapon versus Leader. The Legionaries also chose Seek and Destroy and ended up with Headhunter, Rout and Challenge. And for their challenge they chose the Anointed against my Justicar. No tac ops being used, and the Legionaries are going to use their free strategic ploy for mutagenic flesh. And with that, it's the end of the first strategy phase, and we move straight into the firefight phase. Starting with the Grey Knights, they're all in Conceal, although we do have the Infiltrate option to change one. I am definitely up against it. I'm down a wound on every operative. I don't have free strategic ploys, so I need to score victory points, so I'm going to start straight away. The Anointed moves forward as well, getting some victory points for the team. Not going full Demon quite yet. Keeping in mind Challenge and Rout, I move this Grey Knight onto the objective and loot it, knowing he'll need to push forward next turn. Back to the Legionaries, and the Heavy Gunner is going to clamber onto the vantage point and loot the objective. Looking to press forward with the Justicar as he's my big heavy hitter, I move him forward behind this heavy terrain cover, still in Conceal. My opponent moves and dashes with the ShriveTalon onto the objective, still in Conceal, and then loots it for 1 victory point. It's a bit risky leaving the Grey Knight out in the relative open, but I move, dash and loot to get a victory point. Being a bit reserved with the Balefire Acolyte, just a small shuffle. Just looking back at this, and it feels like a waste to have not used a power in the first turn. If the Balefire Acolyte had started the game here, the Plasma Gunner would have been visible and as such could be targeted for malign influence, giving him a little buff and he could have still moved forward. Grey Knight on the far right flank is just going to move forward behind the barricade, not wanting to press too far forward to get countercharged just yet. Looking to match the aggression on the right flank, the chosen leader moves forward as well, sticking to some heavy cover. So you've probably noticed this guy is way out of position here, and as such, he just moves forward. I was hoping to bait out the Plasma Gunner so that I could counter with my Psycanon, and had intended on hopping up onto this vantage point. However, the way the Legionaries have moved and the board is set up, they're all behind some form of heavy terrain, and as such, he just has no targets. Speaking of the Plasma Gunner, my opponent moves him onto the vantage point, which still does have heavy cover from the other vantage point incidentally, supercharges his plasma and fires at the Grey Knight out in the open. With supercharge, that's going to be 4 attacks hitting on 3s at AP 2. Gets 2 hits and going to spend a CP to re-roll, and gets a critical hit. At AP 2, that's just going to be 1 die for defense. Does make it, but that's still going to be a crit and a normal going through for exactly 11 wounds. And that's the first Grey Knight taken out. And with that, the Plasma Gunner takes out one of the Grey Knights with a single volley. And with that disastrous shooting, we end the first turn. Let's have a look at what's happened. Both teams have pushed forward, with both sides having Rout, it's obvious why. Only 1 death this turn, but with the elite teams everybody counts, and it only took 1 shot from the Plasma Gunner to do it. Both sides scored 3 objectives each, meaning the scores at the end of turn 1 are 3 apiece. So my plan for next turn is to hopefully go first. If I can, then I'm going to charge onto this objective. I'll need Tide of Celerity to get there, hopefully kill the ShriveTalon, but I would have to get pretty lucky. And if I can, then I loot that objective while I hold it to get 1 point and then 1 point for Rout as well. Then that guy unfortunately is dead because he'll get countercharged no doubt, but hopefully that's going to draw the Chosen out so I can shoot and or charge him with my power weapon Grey Knight to get the challenge victory points. On the other side of the board, I kind of need to close in on the Plasma Gunner or get into a position to shoot him and also continue scoring the objectives, which would be a lot easier with an extra body, but that's already happened now, so I'm going to have to make do. That's it, on to turn 2. Onto the turn 2 initiative phase, and the roll-off Legionaries get a 1 and the Grey Knights get a 3, so they'll be keeping initiative. Onto the turn 2 strategy phase now, and both sides will get a CP, which as we all know derives from the Latin Cariosus Passer, meaning Decayed Sparrow.
God, I hate you.
Starting with the Grey Knights, who are going to play Tide of Celerity to get some extra movement on the charge. before passing over to the Legionaries, who are going to use their free strategy for mutagenic flesh again. And then the Grey Knights are also going to play Bolter Discipline. No more strategic ploys being played by either side, so we move on to the Tac Ops, and the Grey Knights are going to reveal Rout. Not to be outdone and also feeling a little routy, the Legionaries will also reveal Rout.
That is one big pile of shit.
With the strategy phase done, we now move on to the firefight phase. Starting with the Grey Knights, and I immediately doubt a Grey Knight's ability to take out the ShriveTalon in combat, so instead of banking on that to steal the objective, I instead loot this objective first and then charge in. With the Falchions, there's a strong chance that I'll get 5 hits through, and even though the ShriveTalon will go first, I should be able to at least injure him. 2 crits and 3 misses, but with Relentless, that turns into 2 crits and 3 hits. My opponent rolls some horrendous dice and just gets the 1 hit. Doesn't go for a reroll at this stage. With mutagenic flesh, all normal damage is reduced by 1, so instead of 22 damage, it's actually only 19. So if the ShriveTalon parries first, it can take out a crit leaving 14 damage, and with just 1 more success, he can parry again and he'd still be alive with only 1 wound remaining. As it happens though, my opponent decides to strike with a critical, dealing 5 damage to the Grey Knight before he's taken out. So with a healthy dose of luck, my Grey Knight actually takes out the ShriveTalon. However, I haven't capitalized on clearing out the objective, and I doubt it'll stay clear for long. I do also get 1 victory point for Rout. The Plasma Gunner fires again, this time targeting the Grey Knight on the objective behind the barricade. Overcharging, and it's 4 shots hitting on 3s. Gets a 1 but gonna re-roll it, ending up with 1 crit and 3 hits. Which, if you've done your maths, is another dead Grey Knight no matter what I roll. I hate plasma. The Plasma Gunner then does a little shuffle to make sure that obscuring terrain is still between him and the Psycanon. Are you ready for what will henceforth be known as the mistake? I dash with the Justicar and loot the objective. I then move forward towards the Plasma Gunner and the Annointed in conceal. I'm going to try and justify it. I was trying to put pressure on the Plasma Gunner so that I could charge him later. But what I ended up doing was bringing the Justicar towards the Annointed, forgetting that he was the challenge target for the Annointed, and I didn't know this at the time, but my opponent also has Headhunter, so this turns out to be a juicy 4 victory points that I just land on his doorstep. The Heavy Gunner loots the objective on the vantage point and then shuffles over to get line of sight on the Justicar. From high up on his vantage point, the Heavy Gunner with Heavy Bolter unloads into the Justicar below. 5 shots with the Heavy Bolter, needing 3s to hit. Not a great roll, just 2 hits, and with the True Silver Armour it's going to be 2 up saves, and he's fine. With the way the Plasma Gunner is moving, this piece of heavy terrain is blocking the Psycanon shooting, so instead he changes target and aims for the Heavy Gunner instead. The Psycanon is going to be 5 attacks, hitting on 3s, doing a solid 4-6 damage. If it hits.
Psycanon. More like, cannon. Am I right?
Only ends up as 1 hit, and the Heavy Gunner makes his save. I then move him back, thinking that I'll just focus on objectives with him from now on. Finally ready to put my 6 wound Grey Knight out of misery, the Legionary Chosen charges into the Marine on this objective with his crit 7 damage, lethal 5 plus Demon Blade. Gulp. Not to fear though, it's only 5 attacks hitting on 2s, which ends up as 2 crits and 3 hits for a total of 26 wounds, which is only 20 wounds more than he needed. I go through the elaborate pantomime of rolling my attack die, knowing that the first crit will kill me anyway. And with that, the 3rd Grey Knight falls and I am down to half my forces already. So, this is obviously a mistake, and here's how it went down. I play Only in Death Does Duty End. hear me out. Russ from the editing room, hello, knows this can only be done on ready operatives, but that loser past Russ is a clueless In his addled mind, he plays this so that the Legionaries can't score the objective with the Chosen's final action and must remain in combat. So, anyway, we continue, but this of course is not correct. Hello. Russ from the editing room again. So the past players go off and have some lunch, and when they come back, they place the Grey Knight back but can't decide if he should be in engagement range of the Chosen. It's been a while since I played Marines. Anyway, he should still be in engagement range as per Only in Death, even though we've played it wrong, but we decide in fact that he isn't. I think we end up just rolling for it to save time. That post-food malaise. Anyway, back to the game. Chasing down the target of his challenge, the power weapon wielding Grey Knight moves forward and shoots at the Chosen Legionary. 4 attacks hitting on 3s with Relentless, and he doesn't need it, that's all 4 hits. Makes 3 saves, but that's 1 going through. It is Psybolt ammunition, so that would be 4, but with mutagenic flesh, that's only 3 damage. Fires again with Bolt of Discipline. After Relentless, that ends up as 1 crit and 2 hits. Makes 2 saves and then uses a reroll to try and go for the 3rd. Gets 3 normal saves, but with Disgusting Vigor can turn 1 into a crit, so that's no damage going through. It was a bit of a messy time, and I want to thank you for sticking through it with me. Basically, I'm down 1 command point and I've only taken 3 wounds from the Chosen Legionary, and technically I stopped the Legionaries looting that objective. Now that his duty has finally ended, the Grey Knight leaves and the Balefire Acolyte walks over and loots the objective.
I'm embarrassed that I know you. And I'm a demon. A poop demon.
The Balefire Acolyte then casts Life Siphon on the Grey Knight. 5 attacks for Life Siphon hitting on 3s, and that's 4 hits. Only manages 1 save, and after a reroll makes it 2, but that's still 2 going through for 6 damage, and because 2 damage went through, it's going to heal another model D3 wounds. And he gets the big 3, so he's going to heal the Chosen Legionary up to full wounds. At this stage, my opponent has siphoned the life out of myself and my operative, but I shall persevere. Firing Overwatch now, the Grey Knight targets the Chosen. A decent round of shooting ends with a crit and 2 hits. A crit and a normal save are made, and then after a reroll, all the saves are made. It's the move I've been dreading. The Annointed goes full demon and charges into the Justicar. In demon form, he's rocking 5 ceaseless attacks with lethal 5+ and rending at 4/5 damage. Not a bad start for the Justicar, that's only 3 hits and no crits. Just the 1 crit. Starting with the Annointed, and he's going to strike for 4 damage. The crit from the Justicar has stun, so as it strikes, it parries a normal attack as well. We do make a mistake with mutagenic flesh here. It shouldn't reduce crit damage, so this should be 6, but instead we roll 5 disgusting resilience saves, passing 2, and then the Anointed strikes again for 4 damage and chooses to fight again. Gets 3 crits, a hit, and a reroll with Ceaseless, which doesn't come through, but no matter what the Justicar does now, the first strike will kill him. Annoyingly, it's a great roll, and if I'd gotten that the first time round, he probably would have won combat. As it happens though, he gets taken out of action by the Anointed for a boatload of victory points. Getting a grand total of 4 victory points, 2 for Headhunter and 2 for Challenge. That puts them firmly in the lead. So that's it for turn 2, let's have a look at what happened. A lot of action happening this turn, a lot of movement towards those objectives on the far flanks, and 4 deaths, 3 Grey Knights and 1 Legionary. As far as the mission objectives go, both sides managed to loot 2 objectives, each scoring 2 victory points for the mission. And for the secondaries, the Legionaries scored big with 4 victory points for Challenge and Headhunter, with the Grey Knights getting 1 victory point for Rout. I'm not sure it can happen, but if I can kill the Chosen with this Grey Knight, then I can get 2 victory points for Challenge. The Gunner should be able to make it onto this objective for another 1 victory point, taking me up to 9, but realistically the Legionaries will get these 3 objectives, taking them up to 12, and they'll probably kill both of the remaining Grey Knights, so it's not looking great as we move into turn 3. Moving into the turn 3 initiative phase, and with the initiative roll, Grey Knights get a 2 and the Legionaries get a 4, so they'll be taking the first turn. Moving into the turn 3 strategy phase, and both sides will get a command point. I debated using Bolter Discipline so I could fire twice with my Grey Knight with Psybolt ammunition, but against mutagenic flesh it's just not that powerful. I end up saving the CP, and of course my opponent uses mutagenic flesh again for free because it's so good, why wouldn't you? It's at this stage that I really wish I'd brought an incinerator instead. So with the strategy phase behind us, we now move firmly into the firefighting phase. Legionaries have the initiative, so they'll be going first. My opponent activates a chosen Legionary. He's going to loot the objective for 1 victory point and charge into my Grey Knight. It's a very scary operative. A single crit from the Demon Blade will kill the Grey Knight outright. We miscount the hits and it ends up as only 3 crits, but it should have been 3 crits and a normal hit. Doesn't matter what the Grey Knight gets, with only 5 wounds remaining, he gets killed by the first crit. And as he dies, he drags any hope that I had remaining with him. In a cinematic flurry of his Demon Blade, he takes out the Grey Knight with a single strike. With no hope of winning in the points, I am going for moral victories now, and I move my gunner to target the Anointed that killed my lovely Justicar. Bit of a disappointing roll, gets a hit and a crit. I'm going to use my last reroll, why the hell not? And of course, makes 2 saves, and because of disgusting vigor, 1 can become a crit, so no damage goes through. Whether it's mercy or not, the plasma gunner then decides to shoot at my gunner, overcharging and firing plasma death. Overcharging with 4 shots, looking for 3s, just gets the 1 and going to use a reroll to avoid the hot roll, and it's a 2, so that's just 1 going through, and he's in cover, so he's going to take it. The gunner is then going to move down onto the objective and loot it for another victory point. Which throws it back to the gunner in Overwatch, still going to try and take out that Anointed, because why the hell not? Gets a good spread on their hits, getting 1 crit and 3 successes. The Anointed makes a crit and a normal save, leaving 2 normals going through. With mutagenic flesh, this is a total of 6 damage. Makes 3 disgustingly resilient saves, so that's only 3 wounds down. The Anointed races forward. And the Balefire Acolyte moves onto this objective and loots it for another victory point. And the Heavy Gunner up on the vantage point is going to loot for another victory point and then move to get line of sight on the Heavy Gunner and shoots. Heavy bolter shells rain down on the Grey Knight Gunner as he hunkers down for cover. Gets a crit and a hit with the heavy bolter, so it will be P1. The Grey Knight takes a cover save and rolls the last one, using both of them to cancel out the crit, leaving the normal going through for 4 damage. He's managed to survive somehow and he remains on 7 wounds, so he's not injured, but that's the end of the turn, so let's have a look at what's happened. Hardly any movement for the Grey Knights, but there's hardly any left, and the Legionaries are now surging forward. Only 1 death this turn, but that does mean there's now 5v1. And the Legionaries scored their maximum of 4 objectives this turn. I'm not going to insult you by discussing tactics this turn, let's just get into it. It's the final turn. Turn 4 initiative phase, and the Legionaries will be getting the initiative, so they'll be going first, so that is pretty much game over. Moving into the last strategy phase, and both sides are going to get a command point. Starting with the Legionaries, they're going to play mutagenic flesh, not that it's probably going to come into it, and the Grey Knights are fine, they've got nothing that will benefit the gunner. So with that done, we're going to move straight into the last firefight phase. Starting proceedings with a bang, and the Balefire Acolyte is going to cast a Fire Blast at the Grey Knight Gunner. Summoning demonic flames from the Immaterium, the Balefire Acolyte bathes the last remaining Grey Knight in searing hot flames. 4 dice, looking for 3s. Gets 2 hits, but the Grey Knight makes his saves. Unsheathing his fell dagger, it looks like he'll have to handle this up close and personal. Charging in, the Balefire Acolyte strikes. 5 attacks, looking for 3s. Gets 3 hits and a critical, and that critical will inflict 2 mortal wounds straight off the bat. The Grey Knight Gunner gets a crit and a normal with his fists. First crit from the Acolyte deals 4 damage, leaving the Grey Knight with just 1 wound remaining. The Grey Knight's own crit does 4 damage, and then he's taken out of action by the next strike from the Balefire Acolyte. And with that, the last of the Grey Knights is taken out of action. The Legionaries will also score 1 victory point for rout, taking their total to 14. In a quick summary, the Plasma Gunner will loot this objective for an additional victory point. The Chosen then moves on to this objective and loots it for another victory point, leaving the Legionaries with a sizable lead at the end of the game of 10 points, with a final score of 16 to the Legionaries and 6 for the Grey Knights. There probably wasn't much doubt, but in the end, the Legionaries took the victory. It was a hard fight from the start. Even with the bump in operatives, the Grey Knights were still a wound down across the line, and being a specialist team, the Legionaries had access to a free strategic ploy each turn, and as Nurgle they are an incredibly durable team. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, thanks for my patrons, and I'll see you in the next video.